Some memories never fade. They have fur, bright eyes, and the gift of loving us without saying a word. Because every dog carries a story, and maybe a part of yours. Get ready to discover more than a breed. Discover a lifelong companion.
Sirens echo through the city. A Dalmatian runs majestically alongside a fire truck, its spots dancing under the red light of the sirens. For more than 200 years, this image has symbolized courage and loyalty. But few know that this partnership began far from modern streets in the wild mountains of ancient Croatia. This is the extraordinary story of how a fierce war dog transformed into the most beloved firefighter mascot. An epic journey of blood, fire, and a loyalty that spanned centuries. A saga that began more than 600 years ago and continues alive today. In the rocky lands of Dalmatia, the region we now know as Croatia, 15th century. The cold wind cuts through the mountains while soldiers marched along dangerous trails. Beside them, not horses, but dogs of unique appearance. White coats spotted with black patches, alert eyes, tense muscles. These were the original Dalmatians. These dogs were not pets. They were war machines, bred to resist day-long marches, sleep in the open, and protect their commanders with their lives. Their spots were not just beauty, they were perfect camouflage among the shadows of Dalmatian rocks. Each spot unique like a fingerprint, impossible to duplicate. Croatian soldiers discovered something extraordinary. These dogs possessed supernatural endurance. While other dogs tired after kilometers, Dalmatians continued running. Their hearts beat in perfect synchrony with the march rhythm. They were the only ones capable of accompanying regiments on their long journeys through treacherous mountains. But there was something more. These dogs developed a fierce protective instinct. They slept in circles around the camps, alert to any suspicious movement. During battles, they remained beside the wounded, defending them to death. Their loyalty was absolute, their courage legendary. During the Ottoman Wars, when Turkish armies invaded the Balkans, Dalmatians proved their worth, not just as sentinels, but as canine soldiers. They ran between enemy lines, carrying secret messages. Their small, agile bodies allowed them to hide where cavalry could not. Many battles were won thanks to military intelligence transported by these brave dogs. The legendary commander Nikola Jurisic, defender of Košegg, owned a Dalmatian named Vuk, which means wolf in Croatian. Vuk not only accompanied Jurisic in battle, but saved his life 3 times. The first time he alerted about a Turkish ambush. The second, he attacked an assassin approaching the commander during the night. The third, he carried a request for reinforcements when Jurisic was wounded and surrounded. Vuk ran 60 kilometers in enemy territory, crossed frozen rivers, and reached imperial headquarters. Reinforcements arrived in time. Stories like Vuk's spread throughout Europe. Nobles began hiring Dalmatian soldiers specifically for their dogs. They paid fortunes for puppies descended from famous military lineages, but they discovered they could not simply buy the loyalty of these animals. Dalmatians chose their masters, and once chosen, served until death. After the wars, many Dalmatians were orphaned. Their commanders had died in battle, and the dogs refused to accept new owners. They wandered European roads in wild packs, searching for something to replace the military purpose they had lost. That's when merchants began to notice them. Antonio Marcello, a Venetian merchant, was the first to domesticate a pack of veteran war Dalmatians. He was traveling from Venice to Constantinople with a caravan loaded with spices when bandits attacked. The hired guards fled, but the Dalmatians remained. 5 dogs against 20 bandits. When the fight ended, the bandits had fled, but 2 Dalmatians were mortally wounded. Marcello cared for the wounded dogs as if they were his own children. In return, they became the fiercest guardians any caravan ever had. They ran kilometers ahead of the caravan, exploring the path. They returned with specific barks. One pattern for clear path, another for danger ahead, a third for hidden bandits. Marcello became the most successful merchant in the Mediterranean, protected by his Dalmatian guardians. Fame spread. Soon, all European trade routes had caravans protected by Dalmatians. These dogs developed a complex language with their human masters. Different bark combinations indicated specific types of threats. One long bark followed by 2 short ones meant wolves. 3 rapid barks indicated mounted bandits. A low howl warned about approaching storm. But it was in England that Dalmatians found their second calling. Lord Wellington, veteran of the Napoleonic Wars, brought the first Dalmatian to London in 1815. He had seen these dogs in action during the war and was impressed by their endurance. He decided to use it as a carriage dog, an animal that would run alongside his aristocratic carriage, demonstrating status and offering protection. The experiment was revolutionary. Wellington's Dalmatian, called Wellington's Ghost due to its ghostly spots, became a London legend. It ran alongside the ducal carriage with military elegance, never losing formation, never showing fatigue. Its presence intimidated highway robbers and and impressed high society. Soon all English aristocracy wanted their own carriage Dalmatian, but they discovered these dogs maintained their military instincts. They were not ornaments, they were active protectors. They attacked any threat to the carriage, ran through hostile crowds, warned about ambushes. Many English lords owed their lives to the Dalmatians that ran faithfully alongside their carriages. Queen Victoria fell in love with Dalmatians. She owned 12, each with a pompous name and documented lineage. But it was Spot, a particularly small Dalmatian with star-shaped spots, who conquered her heart. Spot not only accompanied the royal carriage, he slept in the Queen's room, ate at the royal table, even participated in council meetings. Foreign diplomats learned to greet Spot before speaking with Her Majesty. During Prince Albert's funeral, it was Spot who led the funeral procession. Wearing a black mourning collar, he walked solemnly at the front of the carriage, carrying the coffin. Witnesses said the dog seemed to understand the solemnity of the moment, keeping his head low and pace measured. Photographs of that funeral show Spot as a central figure, not just a pet, but a respected family member. Dalmatian popularity exploded throughout Europe. London parks filled with aristocrats showing off their carriage dogs. Informal competitions began, which Dalmatian ran with more elegance, which maintained better formation, which demonstrated greater loyalty. Specialized breeders emerged, developing specific lineages for different functions. But it was on London's dusty streets that Dalmatians found their final destiny. The city was growing rapidly, but with it, devastating fires, wooden houses, narrow streets, flames that spread like plagues. Firefighters of the era used horse-drawn carriages to reach fire scenes, and here begins the most important transformation in Dalmatian history. The horses were sensitive, nervous. The smell of smoke, the noise of flames, screaming crowds, all of this frightened them. They frequently reared up, refused to advance, or fled in panic. Captain James Morrison, chief of Westminster firefighters, faced this problem daily. His best carriages arrived late to fires because horses refused to cooperate. It was Lady Margaret Thornbury who suggested the solution. Watching her Dalmatian Perseus running calmly alongside the carriage during a fire in the neighboring district, she realized the dog showed no fear of flames whatsoever. She proposed to Morrison that he try using Dalmatians to calm the firefighters' horses. Morrison, desperate, agreed to try. The first test was in 1752. A fire had started in a textile factory in the East End. Morrison selected his fastest carriage and, for the first time in history, included 2 Dalmatians in the team. The dogs ran alongside the carriage, and something magical happened. The horses, normally terrified by smoke, remained calm. The presence of Dalmatians tranquilized them. More importantly, Dalmatians did not fear fire. When they arrived at the fire, while horses trembled with fear, Dalmatians remained steady. They ran between flames, carrying messages, warning about imminent dangers, even pulling hoses when necessary. Their phenomenal endurance allowed them to work for hours without rest. The result was so impressive that Morrison immediately ordered Dalmatians for all fire stations under his command. Other London fire chiefs copied the innovation. In 6 months, there wasn't a single fire carriage in London that didn't have at least 1 Dalmatian running alongside it. But it was Rex, a veteran Dalmatian from Piccadilly Station, who forever sealed the union between Dalmatians and firefighters. London, 1786. A monstrous fire was consuming St. Mary's Orphanage. The flames were so intense that not even the most experienced firefighters could approach. 23 children were trapped on the 2nd floor, screaming for help from the windows. Rex was 8 years old, veteran of hundreds of fires. He knew every type of flame, every sound fire made when a roof was about to collapse. When they arrived at the orphanage, Rex did something no dog had ever done before. Ignoring his trainer Captain Morrison's commands, he ran directly into the burning building. The firefighters watched in horror as the dog disappeared into dense smoke. Morrison shouted commands, but Rex did not obey. Minutes that seemed like hours passed. The crowd gathered in the streets fell silent, watching the 2nd floor windows where children were still screaming. Then, through the black smoke that was beginning to completely engulf the building, a figure emerged from the flames. Rex, with his singed coat and panting, carefully carried a small child in his jaws. He deposited the child safely in Morrison's arms and, without hesitation, ran back into hell. The crowd erupted in encouraging shouts. 5 times Rex entered that burning building. 5 children were saved. On the 6th attempt, when he ran after another child, the roof collapsed. The silence that followed was deafening. Morrison and his men ran to the rubble, digging desperately. They found Rex 2 hours later, unconscious but alive, covering a 4-year-old girl with his body. Both had survived, protected by a beam that Rex had somehow managed to position over them. The child didn't have a scratch. Rex had broken 2 ribs and burned his paws, but would live to become a legend. The news spread like fire. Newspapers throughout Europe told the story of the hero dog. The London Times dedicated its entire front page to Rex's story. Poets wrote verses about his courage. Artists painted portraits of the hero dog. Even Queen Victoria sent a personal letter of thanks and a special medal made by the Crown jewelers. From that day forward, it was no longer a matter of utility, it was love. Firefighters didn't use Dalmatians just because they were useful. They loved them because they shared the same mission, saving lives, regardless of risk. Rex became the first official London firefighter dog with his own salary and even special uniform. The tradition spread like waves throughout Europe. Paris adopted Dalmatians in 1790. Berlin followed in 1802. Rome, Vienna, Madrid, all major European cities soon had their own firefighter Dalmatians, each with their own heroic stories, each loved and respected as an integral team member. The tradition crossed the ocean. America, 1820. The first Dalmatians arrived at American fire stations along with European immigrants. But here, the relationship evolved even further. American firefighters lived in the stations and Dalmatians became true family members. Benjamin Franklin, who had created Philadelphia's first volunteer fire company, was one of the first Americans to adopt Dalmatians. His dog, Liberty, became as famous as his owner. Liberty not only accompanied firefighters, he helped Franklin in his scientific experiments about fire and electricity. Some of Franklin's most important discoveries were made observing how Liberty reacted to different types of flames and smoke. Each American station developed unique traditions with their Dalmatians. In New York, Sparky became famous for finding people trapped in rubble. His scent was so sharp he could detect survivors buried under meters of debris. Chicago had Blaze, a Dalmatian, who learned to operate manual sirens. San Francisco prided itself on Flame, the first Dalmatian trained specifically for skyscraper rescues. Each Dalmatian's spots became famous. Firefighters knew every spot, every unique pattern. They developed the habit of telling stories through the spots. Each spot represented an important fire, a life saved, a heroic moment. Veterans had darker spots, as if they carried in their coat the memories of every flame faced. During the American Civil War, Firefighter Dalmatians became symbols of hope. When Atlanta burned in 1864, it was a Dalmatian named Sherman, ironically named after the general who ordered the burning, who guided rescue teams through burning streets, saving trapped civilians. Sherman worked for 3 consecutive days, sleeping only a few hours between rescues. Modern science began to reveal the secrets behind Dalmatians' extraordinary endurance. Dr. Charles Darwin, fascinated by these unique dogs, dedicated an entire chapter of the origin of species to Dalmatians. He discovered their hearts are 20% larger than normal, pump blood more efficiently. Their lungs process oxygen with efficiency superior to any other canine breed. Even more surprising, Darwin discovered Dalmatians possess natural resistance to carbon monoxide, the lethal gas produced by fires. While other dogs quickly faint when exposed to toxic smoke, Dalmatians can function normally for much longer periods. It's as if millions of years of evolution had prepared them specifically to work in fire environments. Their spots also hold fascinating scientific secrets. Each Dalmatian is born completely white. Spots appear gradually in the first weeks of life, following complex genetic patterns that still challenge modern science. No pattern repeats. There are billions of possible combinations. It's impossible to find 2 identical Dalmatians. Each carries in their coat a unique signature, like snowflakes that never repeat. Dr. Gregor Mendel, genetics pioneer, spent years studying Dalmatian spot inheritance. He discovered spots are not random. They follow complex mathematical patterns. Puppies inherit specific tendencies from parents. If the father has large chest spots, puppies will probably have similar spots. But the exact pattern never completely repeats. There were more mysteries. Dalmatians developed a special connection with horses that defies scientific explanation. Even dogs that never saw a horse instinctively know how to run alongside them, maintaining perfect rhythm. Veterinarians of the era believed they developed telepathic communication with equines after centuries of partnership. Professor James McConnell of Edinburgh University spent a decade studying this phenomenon. He discovered Dalmatians can synchronize their heartbeats with horses. When a Dalmatian runs alongside a horse, both hearts literally beat in unison. This synchronization allows them to maintain perfect rhythms for hours, as if they were a single organism. 20th century technology changes everything. Carriages give way to motorized trucks. There's no longer need for Dalmatians to calm horses. Many thought it was the end of tradition. They were completely wrong. Firefighters categorically refused to abandon their canine companions. Captain Robert Murphy, Boston fire chief, expressed the general feeling, remove our Dalmatians from the stations over our dead bodies. These dogs are not just tools. They are our brothers, our partners, our inspiration. While there's fire to fight, there will be Dalmatians running with us. Dalmatians adapted again, once more proving their extraordinary versatility. Now they ran alongside trucks, their paws touching asphalt to the same rhythm as engines. They developed new bark language for communication with drivers. They continued being the first to get off vehicles, the last to give up a search. Their function evolved dramatically. They became four-legged therapists, consoling traumatized victims, offering comfort in moments of despair. During the Great Depression, when suicides increased dramatically, Firefighter Dalmatians saved more lives through prevention than fighting fire. Their warm, comforting presence gave hope to people who had lost everything. Story after story accumulated during the 20th century. During the San Francisco earthquake in 1906, Dalmatians worked for days without rest, searching for survivors in rubble. Buster, a veteran Dalmatian, found 42 people alive buried in debris. He worked until fainting from exhaustion, being carried by firefighters as a hero. In World War I, Firefighter Dalmatians were sent to France to help in bombed cities. They quickly adapted to modern war horrors. They learned to distinguish between different types of explosions, alerting teams about imminent bombings. Many died in service, but saved thousands of civilian lives. During World War II, Dalmatians faced their greatest challenge. The London Blitz tested their courage like never before. Bombs fell every night. Fires erupted simultaneously in dozens of locations. Dalmatians worked tirelessly, running between debris, finding survivors, consoling wounded. Prince, a Dalmatian from Westminster Station, became a symbol of London resistance. During one particularly terrible night, when 50 fires burned simultaneously, Prince worked for 18 consecutive hours. He guided rescue teams, found dozens of survivors, consoled terrified children in shelters. When he finally collapsed from exhaustion, the entire city wept. Winston Churchill, himself a Dalmatian lover, visited Prince in veterinary hospital. He said, "Prince's spirit represents the best of British spirit. Never give up, always serve, protect innocence without thinking of oneself." Prince received the Dickin Medal, animal equivalent of Victoria Cross, becoming the first decorated firefighter dog in military history. After the war, Firefighter Dalmatians helped in reconstruction, not just of physical cities but human morale. Their cheerful, brave presence reminded people there was hope. Life continued. Heroes existed in unexpected forms. Fire stations became community centers, and Dalmatians were the stars attracting children and families. The 50s and 60s brought new technological revolution. Firefighting equipment became more sophisticated. Bigger trucks, more powerful hoses, advanced protective equipment. Again, some questioned whether there was place for Dalmatians in the modern era. Again, they were wrong. Dalmatians adapted once more. They became specialists in public education about fire prevention. They visited schools, teaching children about fire safety. Their presence made lessons memorable and fun. Millions of children learned about fire prevention through Firefighter Dalmatian programs. Sparky, the National Fire Protection Association's official dog, became America's most famous Dalmatian. He appeared in cartoons, children's books, advertising campaigns. Generations of Americans grew up knowing Sparky and his safety lessons. The Learn Not to Burn program with Sparky reduced home fires by 40% during the 70s. In the 80s, Firefighter Dalmatians faced new tragedy that would test their worth once more. The Chernobyl explosion created radioactive fires that lasted weeks. Soviet firefighters brought specially trained Dalmatians to work in contaminated environments. These hero dogs worked in the exclusion zone, helping evacuate civilians and fight radioactive fires. Laika, ironic name given in honor of the first dog in space, became a symbol of canine bravery at Chernobyl. She worked for months in the contaminated zone, developing partial resistance to radiation that impressed scientists. When finally evacuated, she had helped save hundreds of lives. She lived to 15, inspiring research on animal radiation resistance. The World Trade Center attack in 2001 marked another defining moment for Firefighter Dalmatians. Jake, a veteran Dalmatian from the station near the complex, was among the first responders. He worked for days in the rubble, searching for survivors, consoling desperate families. His image, covered in dust but still running between debris, became a symbol of American resistance. But it was his later work that most impressed. Jake spent months visiting victims' families, offering silent comfort. His calm presence helped orphaned children deal with trauma. Widows find strength to continue. Therapists said Jake achieved what humans could not, offering unconditional love without asking questions, without judging, just being present. Today, in the 21st century, Dalmatians continue serving in stations around the world, not for practical necessity, but for something deeper: tradition, love, respect for a partnership that transcends utility. They are living symbols of courage, loyalty, and sacrifice. Their spots tell the most beautiful story ever written between humans and animals. Modern technology brought new possibilities. Dalmatians are now trained with GPS for locating people lost in forest fires. Special cameras on their collars transmit real-time images to command teams. teams. Some carry basic medical equipment, offering first aid until human paramedics arrive. In firefighter museums around the world, old photographs show generations of Dalmatians alongside their human partners. Bright eyes, moving tails, always ready for the next mission. Even retired veteran Dalmatians still run when they hear sirens, as if an ancestral force called them to duty. The Firefighter Dogs Memorial in New York lists more than 3,000 Dalmatians who died in service since 1750. Each name represents not just a brave animal, but a life dedicated entirely to serving others. Rex, Prince, Jake, Sparky, Buster. Heroes whose stories inspire new generations of human and canine firefighters. Modern genetic research revealed that all Firefighter Dalmatians descend from just 12 original dogs brought from Croatia in the 18th century. These 12 ancestors carried unique genes that were preserved and perfected through centuries of careful selection. Each modern Dalmatian carries in their DNA the courage of Croatian warriors and the loyalty of firefighter heroes. Universities now offer courses on Firefighter Dalmatian history. Veterinary students study their unique physiology. Animal psychologists research their extraordinary capacity to form bonds with humans. Historians document their influence on the evolution of modern emergency services. The transformation is complete, but the story continues. The fierce war dog of Croatian mountains found its true purpose on modern city streets. From guardian of soldiers to savior of civilian lives, from wild predator to symbol of hope, this is the most extraordinary evolution in canine history, a saga that began centuries ago and is still being written. Each Dalmatian born today carries in their unique spot the story of their heroic ancestors. Each spot tells a story of courage. Each pattern represents generations of service. When you see a Dalmatian running alongside a fire truck, know you're seeing much more than a pretty dog. You're seeing centuries of evolution driven by the noblest purpose: protect and serve. You're seeing the living history of a partnership that saved millions of lives. You're seeing a four-legged hero who never gave up serving, no matter how many times the world changed around them. Sirens continue echoing through modern cities, and wherever firefighters run to save lives, the spirit of Dalmatians runs with them, eternal, unwavering, forever loyal to the mission of protecting and serving. This is the most beautiful story of transformation and purpose. This is the story of Dalmatians. From war dogs to firefighter angels, an epic saga that remains alive in every station, in every rescue, in every life saved. And the story continues. New Dalmatians are born every day, carrying in their DNA the courage of their ancestors and the promise of future generations of heroism. The partnership between humans and firefighter Dalmatians is not just tradition, it's an eternal commitment, a promise that spans centuries, a love story that will never end.